Root Mobile presents Amplify Insider in association with CNBC TV 18.
As digital experiences continue to evolve, businesses are constantly walking a tightrope between offering seamless user interactions and safeguarding sensitive data. In fact, industry reports estimate that cybercrime will cost the world over 10.5 trillion US dollars annually by 2025. So, how do businesses then strike that balance? How can companies ensure top-notch digital experiences and communications without compromising on security? Those are some of the big questions we aim to answer here today on this very special podcast. Hello and welcome to Root Mobile presents Amplify Insider in association with CNBC TV 18. I'm Mridu Bhandari. Today's conversation is all about one of the most critical and sometimes overlooked aspects of digital transformation and digital communications, and that is security. And I'm joined today by an eminent industry expert to help us understand its many nuances. Milind Pathak, Executive Vice President, Product and Marketing at Root Mobile. Welcome, Milind. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Mridu. Thanks for having me over.
Well, I want to start with the big picture. Now, security is often overlooked. We are always concerned about user experience. We are concerned about creating fantastic, brilliant conversations with our customers. But when brands set out to really set their digital communications in place, what are some of the robust security measures that they should be looking at? Any do's and don'ts that you recommend?
If you look at security, when we talk from a customer experience perspective, right from the moment the consumer is interacting with your brand, till the time, maybe he's not even a user of yours then, right? He might just be kind of fidgeting, should he take some of your services or not take your services? Or he might be as evolved as saying, I'm already a user and then I'm going to take some services from you or not, right? At varying level, you could potentially have your security experiences tightened. They could be ensuring that you have OTPs in the place. They could be ensuring that they could be double OTPs. That means you send it on email, you could send it on SMS or whatever. You could have silent verifications, right? You could do more background checks, something called as, we call as like ability to know a behavioral account taker or equivalent, right? So for example, imagine a John Doe comes on a website. At that point in time, based on his digital footprints, based on an historical browsing, based on his account settings, we can capture some data on it, right? And those signals which can be captured by the brand, and then at certain point in time, they could really identify saying, listen, this guy is really John Doe, what he's saying he is, and then pass a further one, right? Mind you, security is not about trying to identify a good or bad or a fraudster, right? The security job is to ensure that they're able to verify and stop a fraudulent activity. It is less to do with the fraudster, but more with the transaction that is potentially a fraud, right? Who does that is a subsequent, it's for a very different set of people to solve, right? Our job is to ensure that within the experience, signals are created and processed to ensure that we are able to kind of pass responsibly and information to a brand who then can take additional steps to cater to, well, this transaction seems a problem. Let's make a physical phone call and validate that particular transaction and so on and so forth.
Digital native brands are, setting out. They are on this high growth path. They want to be super innovative. They want to deliver a customer experience that is unlike any other brands, and that is their USP in that sense. How does one strike the balance between innovation and robust security?
All of us have tried OTP. You have received an OTP and then you put that 4-digit or a 6-digit code that you say in some app or some website, and it takes anywhere between, you make a transaction, the transacting party says, hey, I've sent you an OTP, just please feed it here. So 10-12 seconds goes on that. Then you put an OTP, then you get an OTP, then you put an OTP there, and then the transaction gets, right? This entire thing takes anywhere between 30 to 45 seconds based on whether you have got it on email or whether it's SMS and so on and so forth, right? We work on something very similar, which is called Silent Verify. Now, Silent Verify does similar, but the experience is if you're using an app, you just put your mobile number there, and in 5 seconds, you are inside the app. What has happened is at the back end, we have done validations of the entire process and a transaction and that mobile number by connecting a necessary APIs with the telecom operator. And that experience completely changes. It improves the security because there is no OTP being passed. So either you're in or you're out, because OTP pass means tomorrow, if there is a fraudster, he can game the OTP, right? We keep saying, you must have heard it many times. All the banks always say, everybody says, don't share your OTP with the third party, so on and so forth, right? Correct. So OTP sometimes, if fallen in a wrong hand, could expose an end consumer to risk. But here there is no OTP. So it's a silent verification at the background. Wherever an operator is not able to offer a silent verification, you could still fall back on an OTP and then make it double OTP through different channels and so on and so forth, right?
And how accurate is this silent?
Silent verify based on operator signals, and they are quite accurate, right? Our general advice in the industry has always been to ensure that you treat different types of transaction with different level of intensity. Right. A banking transaction could be treated very differently. A browsing transaction, like if you really want to go into a particular cinema app or a OTT app, right, to view some content. Now, is that really a very high level of security as compared to own bank's bank account, right? It's it's different, right? So it really depends on horses for courses, case to case, which particular account and product and the website that you took a look at. But I think different units would have different sets of security measures around there.
How can brands build that customer trust? Now, brands are trying out new technologies. There are brands that are using WhatsApp commerce. There are brands that, of course, are integrating, digital payments. UPI has kicked off in a very big way in India and abroad for that matter now. How do brands then build customer trust and ensure that any person coming on their website feels comfortable using various ways to pay? And how do you ensure that you never lose a customer because of this?
First and foremost, it's a vicious circle. Great brands are built on the trust of a consumer and loyalty of a customer. Consumers trust the brand because brand gives world-class service and they say what they do and they do what they say, right? So it's a very strong vicious circle. Now, imagine I'm a bank and in my bank, I have been issued a credit card and I start seeing that, my credit card gets, every 1 month I am replacing my card because some fraud is happening somewhere, right? I would lose trust with my brand, right? So as a bank, it's paramount important that I ensure that I follow right kinds of do's and don'ts and bring all kinds of systems to ensure that my consumers are not getting exposed to social engineering frauds or phishing frauds or any promo abuses or account takeovers or whatever, micro lending frauds or any chargeback frauds, all of these, right? And each of these frauds have its own connotations, its own measures, would have even companies focusing on each one of it, right? As a communication player, we support and work with a lot of these use cases to ensure that within the flow, whenever a particular type of a transaction is found to be risky or having a signal which could be in a way sensitive for that transaction, we immediately have those kind of stems that are available, right? So I'll give you one more example. So one of the biggest thing that has been observed globally has been that there is sometimes the fraudster, what they do is they do swim swap before the committing of the fraud. They would SIM swap. So number would be the same, but the SIM has been swapped.
Right.
Now, a lot of operators allow, in a way, APIs which allow the brands or us to know that the SIM has been swapped. So imagine I'm doing hundreds and thousands of dollars of a transaction The mobile number is the same, but the SIM has been swapped.
Right.
We pick up that signal. Moment that signal is done, we pass it to the bank or an e-commerce company or whosoever the potential client is, and then use that data for them to flag a particular transaction. Now, whether that transaction is fraud worthy or a fraud or not is a matter of for that enterprise to sort it out, right? But there are sufficient amount of signals that are available to ensure that it is around there.
So, as a digital communication enabler, you are doing your bit to stop these frauds.
We are doing all of it, right? And more importantly, from a consumer's perspective, journey, it's seamless. Because what is happening is, I have gone using an app of a particular e-commerce or a bank or anything, and I have tried to do a credit card transaction. While that is happening, the number has been fed properly, everything is fed properly. When that number is fed there, right? They always say, right, where to send an OTP. You say, put your mobile number, send an OTP here or something like that, right? When you put the number there, based on the country of origin, there is a possibility to do a check with an operator saying, is this a proper valid SIM, or it is just recently 1 month prior changed or something, right? If you find that this SIM has been changed, I don't know, 15 days ago, 1 month ago, 1 quarter ago, right? It is a potential symptom or it's a potential risk parameter that gets flagged, and somebody in the system is made aware. Now, whether they choose to act on that is that enterprise call.
Correct.
Right? But and all this is at the back end. Right. The consumer doesn't even know, right? So it's that way. Lot of these are very back end processes which the consumer experience does not change in a way.
What are some of the big challenges that brands are facing when it comes to navigating some of these security issues, and what do you anticipate the next couple of years are going to throw up, which perhaps we can't imagine right now?
I think the biggest problem that brands are facing is that in the olden days, right, there was only one way to physically interact with a brand. But now when you look at a digital journey, right from KYC, which is the first time, to then authenticating, then ensuring that transactions are continuously happening there, then ensuring post transactions it is the right person who is really doing that across, right? We have spoken frauds from a perspective of consumer. You and I all could have experienced that somewhere down the line our card gets swiped. I have experienced it. I'm sure you have also experienced it, or somebody in your family would have experienced it, right? Let's look at the enterprise frauds that they expect, right? For example, micro-lending frauds, where how does a bank know that this particular MSISGN mobile number has a potential high risk involvement? So don't lend to him, right? 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 rupees, don't lend into a micro-lending. Now, that itself is another set of fraud which is emerging, right? And billions of dollars are getting lost in all of these globally year after year, right? Now, what do we do in this play? As Root Mobile, we play a very critical role in ensuring that communication between enterprise and consumer is very seamless.
Right.
We are not only communicating to the consumers some information, we are also involved in authentication journeys with the customers, right? And as we evolve, we are running on a very strong trifecta of connectivity, trust, and engagement. So what we call as connect, protect, engage. Protection becomes a very critical element of building this trust in the whole engagement journey, right? So you have to be very cognizant that the customer journey doesn't start at just onboarding. It just ends at onboarding, sorry.
Yeah.
It has to start at onboarding, and then it continues all along, right? And it's a always on process. And you're so true. Fraudsters will keep on finding newer ways of creating fraud. That's their job.
Creative.
They're very creative. That's their job.
Yeah. Security and scalability also go hand in hand, right? As you scale up, you have more volume of transactions, you have higher value transactions as a business. Obviously, those need to be much more secure than they used to be at day zero, for instance. Now, how can companies ensure then that the solutions or the digital communications that they offer are easily scalable and they remain robust and secure throughout that entire journey, especially when they're dealing with very large volumes of customer data?
See, communication has again evolved, and it is really not an enterprise or a root mobile part, right? It's a choice of a consumer where he chooses to stay. Whether he chooses to talk, whether he chooses to SMS, whether he chooses to email, whether he chooses to WhatsApp or RCS, all these are his communication parts across, right? So as you have seen, so there are two sets, or I would say by and large 3 sets of interaction touch points which an enterprise looks at, and a consumer should also potentially look at. One is knowing the choice, knowing the preferred choice of communication which the consumer interacts with an enterprise. Then having a robust ecosystem to ensure that each of those communication channels are at best their best ability watertight for ensuring that the interventions of fraud protections are done. And then the third most important element around here is to ensure that this process has to be continuously adapting and iterative. ऐसा नहीं है कि वो एक बार कर दिया तो हो गया, right? It has to be keep on, you have to keep on evolving and ensure that because the communication channels evolves. What was a one-way communication channel 5 years ago has become a two-way conversation channel, and now has become a conversational commerce channel. We are one of the biggest providers of conversational commerce in India with WhatsApp. In fact, we won an award, one of the best solution provider a couple of days ago with at Medas. Thank you very much. So there, the part is, people don't now look at communication channels as, I have to just communicate. They are now even actively transacting. So when commerce...
Does that make security more challenging? Because now you have transactions happening, commerce happening over a conversational platform.
Actually, it does. Because what happens is, so far, you are just giving information. Ki, send me my whatever, passbook, or I want to have a checkbook at home and so on and so forth, right? Now you are... Of course, banking still doesn't allow transaction there yet. But I'm saying today you could potentially do a ticketing on a WhatsApp. You could do a commerce purchase on WhatsApp, right? And India has leapfrogged globally in terms of its UPI. I mean, our digital payment, I'm sure you would have followed GFF, Global FinTech Fest, that app is same in the city a couple of weeks ago. We are world leader in digital payments. Like, I mean, numero by far.
By far,
right?
Yeah.
So like collective market share and of growing. Remaining countries is, we are twice as big as that, right? So, and growing. So our global strength on digital payment is absolutely unparalleled. And with this great power also comes a great responsibility for us, right? So our intervention touch points for us to really adapt and ensure that we are able to plug the loopholes which potential fraudsters or scamsters may find and dupe an unassuming consumer or an unassuming enterprise has to be in any which way plugged, right? So this brings more challenges, but I think that's the power of the medium too there.
Right. And we're also a country of very different age groups. We have at least 3 to 4 generations living at the same time. We are currently at a median age of 28, 29 years. So, of course, we are a young population, digitally savvy, technically sound. But in the next 7, 8 years, we are also going to have a sizable amount of senior citizens in this country. Now, again, that's a group that gets targeted very much by scamsters, by fraudsters. Do you think that some of this will become more secure over the next couple of years for the nation as a whole? Because collectively, at least whoever I speak to, they say that no, it's not safe for senior citizens to be doing these transactions because obviously digital literacy has, come to them later in life. So do you see some of these behaviors changing?
Senior citizens are a little bit more prone to, they're more gullible and prone to some of these pranksters, fraudsters calling and doing more a threat abuse or promo abuse, right? Ki accident ho gaya hai, paise bhejo, hospital se bol raha hu, ya jail mein chala gaya, something like that, right? So you'll always find these promo abuses or some threat abuses which somebody will say and force them to kind of transfer money. Consumer literacy is the best way to potentially solve this across. I would keep telling the two things always. The 3 things to ensure that fraud doesn't happen with you: never share a password; 2, never share a password; 3, never share a password.
All right. So we are also running this podcast conversation on the sidelines of Root Amplify, your premier event that's coming up later this month in Mumbai. So give us a sense of your expectations from the event. What are you looking forward to?
Oh, I love Root Amplify. I mean, it's like it's our second year in the running. It's our flagship stuff. It's kind of a melting pot for industry professionals, talent all over India. Our industry friends, veterans, colleagues with whom we have done a lot of work on the whole communication channel as a space. It's all about talking in terms of communications, engagement, trust, safety, connectivity, generative AI, conversations about all of that. I'm super excited. Really look forward to hosting a lot of folks and industry friends on 27th of September.
Wonderful. We're all looking forward to that. And finally, as we close this conversation, your final piece of advice to brands that are looking to really enhance digital experiences, create some exhilarating experiences for today's consumer, while also remaining secure and keeping costs under control. Any piece of advice you want to give them?
I think I would really like to say 2 things for the brands. One is that consumer safety is a prime custodian job of an enterprise and a brand too, right? We all at the end serve at the interest of the consumer. So it's absolutely must that the brands bring various intervention to ensure that it is done. It doesn't matter whether you are a travel company or a commerce company or a bank, you have to follow that. And second thing is, let's take more active involvement in teaching the consumer and telling them what's the do's and the don'ts around there, and ensure that gullible people are not scammed in a way. As far as the consumers are concerned, one point is, I mentioned it earlier, is 3 rules: don't share password, don't share OTP, don't share OTP.
All right. Thank you so much, Milind. Absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you
for
very
sharing
much. Absolutely
your
pleasure.
very incredible insights with us. Well, that brings us to the end of this conversation on Amplify Insider. It's clear that businesses must adopt a security-first mindset, especially as threats continue to grow and evolve alongside digital transformation. Remember, securing your digital experience is not just a nice to have, it's absolutely essential for building trust and loyalty in today's landscape. That's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.
Root Mobile presents Amplify Insider in association with CNBC TV 18.